Guys, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret of mine. I kinda like video games. I know, right? It's crazy! But let's be honest, that's a very general statement. When I say I like video games, that tells you literally nothing about me. I could be referring to the intense, high-octane gameplay of Dark Souls, or Senran Kagura. I find myself enjoying most genres. Even if I don't love them completely, I'll find something in there to appreciate. But the types of games I always come back to tend to be story-driven. There's just something I absolutely adore about fully immersing myself in a narrative in which I'm participating in. Holding a controller makes me feel like I'm a part of every event, and not just a bystander watching them unfold. There's only a handful of stories out there that have taken full advantage of a video game's potential when telling their tales. Obviously, a ton of elements in storytelling can be entirely subjective, but there is one game that I feel nearly everyone has unanimously agreed is a masterpiece. I'm of course talking about Naughty Dog's 2013 release, The Last of Us. The Last of Us reached store shelves at the end of the PS3's lifetime. I never got to experience Naughty Dog's magnum opus when it first came out, so like I always do, decided to give it a go nearly a decade later. I'd always heard the praise for The Last of Us. Everyone called it the best story in a video game. Bro, the story's so good. Bro, I love the story. Bro, you gotta play the story. Yada yada yada. Well, I didn't think they'd actually be right. I have no clue how I managed to pull this off, but I've stayed away from Last of Us spoilers for nearly 9 years. How does that even happen? I can't even say the same about the sequel. I know all about Neil Druckmann's bad day at the golf course. But with the original game, I went in as blind as a bat. Or should I say, as blind as a clicker. This was the first title I finished in 2022, and I'm super glad it was. The Last of Us is, for lack of a better term, a true roller coaster of emotions. Everything presented here is executed so masterfully and effectively. The story it tells is this emotional, memorable piece of art that is only further enhanced via gameplay. It's no secret how me and basically everyone who's played it fell in love with this game immediately. So I'm gonna stop wasting your time, and let's actually get this video started. Let's start things off with the premise of The Last of Us, because this isn't just another game about a middle-aged white guy with a gun. I mean, it is, but it's a good game about a middle-aged white guy with a gun. The Last of Us follows the journey of Joel, a guy who survived for 20 years in the ongoing zombie apocalypse, and has made his earnings as a smuggler. He's been tasked with taking Ellie, a 14-year-old girl with a unique immunity to the infection, to a hospital across the country in an effort to create some sort of cure. A shockingly simple foundation for a game as highly praised as this one. Like, how many times have you seen the zombie apocalypse trope? It's ridiculous. But the fact that it's told in the medium of video games is part of what separates The Last of Us from everything else. It truly makes you feel like you're in a zombie apocalypse. It makes you feel like Batman. While the gameplay of The Last of Us isn't revolutionary by any means, it's still enjoyable and perfectly fits the world Naughty Dog has created. Resources are sparse, conditions are dire, and the player experiences that through scouring areas for supplies. There's this constant feeling of desperation, and items are placed at a rate in which you'll have just barely enough to keep going. These resources are of course fully implemented via a crafting system, so you gotta pick and choose what you think will be most helpful for you in that moment. Do I want to duct tape a pair of scissors to my baseball bat, or whip out the least travel-friendly bomb you've ever seen? While it's pretty straightforward, this gameplay loop is definitely effective. Not only did the scavenging aspect give me a hell of a good reason to explore the intricately detailed environments, but picking up a bunch of items is one of the most satisfying things in the world. Something about Joel just rapidly shooting his arms out gives my brain the happy chemicals. Speaking of which, the audio design is stellar. I talked about this in my video on Luigi's Mansion 3, but it really does go a long way when the developers put in that extra effort for those tiny little noises to bring every environment to life. Of course, you got the simple things like footsteps and interactions with appliances, but then they went out of their way to record a different sound for every type of item you can pick up. Like, come on, dude! And it gets even better when they play more into the setting with the swaying of trees, adjustment of reverb as you go in and out of different areas, and everyone's favorite, the water.
It uses the river's movement and turns it into electricity.
If you're gonna play this game, put on some headphones, because that 360 surround sound experience is just something else, man. Hearing a bullet whiz by you, an explosion in the distance, or enemies having a conversation as you approach them are things that'll never fail to keep you on your toes. Like when I enter an area and hear this immediately, that's when I know it's time to throw the PlayStation out the window. But instead of doing that, you can be a brave baby boy and beat these damn things. The combat of The Last of Us is simple as well, yet fleshed out. It's nothing you wouldn't expect from a third-person action adventure. adventure game. But at the same time, you're provided with so many different ways to go about an encounter that not only keep the game interesting, but increase replay value too. Obviously, you got the good old stealth route, waddling around, using your hearing superpowers, taking cover, strangling the guy from behind, you know the drill. Probably the least exciting way to play, but also the safest and least resource dependent. It's great to have a backup option like this in case you're like me and have never landed a shot in your life. Speaking of shots, guns! Which Joel for some reason sticks in his pants? Like seriously, 20 years and my guy couldn't get a holster? There's a good selection of ranged weapons here, most with their own unique gimmicks. You start off with baby's first pistol, which can hold quite a few rounds but doesn't pack too much of a punch. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's El Diablo! It can only hold one round to begin with, but puts an end to anything in its path. Plus that name is metal as hell and I'm all for it. Nothing's topping El Diablo! Wait, hold up. What? What? Of course you got melee as well, so you can just mash square if you're in a pinch. But what's even more fun are the craftable weapons. Molotov cocktails and nail bombs. Both are fun little toys to whip out every now and then. Super helpful if the baddies are huddled up in a group, or you just don't want to attract any attention to yourself. The enemies also really like just walking into them, so it makes your job a lot easier. Thanks, bro. As for the actual goons you'll be tussling with, you've got the humans, who are either soldiers tasked with clearing out all the infected, or people just like you, doing what they can to survive. But the real challenge are the zombos themselves. You got a few different types, because Naughty Dog actually created a whole biological cycle for these things. I'm not gonna make you sit through zombie lore dump with GPS, but the main ones you'll find are runners and clickers. The most common are recently infected people who will run around in arbitrary directions, hoping they'll find you. The sad thing is, it works most of the time. But the clickers are the real deal. These guys have lost their sight, but their hearing is crazy, like nearly as good as Joel's. You also can't punch or strangle them without getting killed, so you either have to spend your resources to slit their throat or fill them up with lead. Each enemy on their own isn't too much of a challenge, but it's when they gang up on you that it gets a bit tricky. It's all about maneuvering yourself around each unique environment, scrambling for cover to catch your breath and patch yourself up. All the while you're being shot at, burning alive from a Molotov, or being jump scared by a clicker. Jeez, man. Let's just say this game has no issue with keeping you on the edge of your seat. But how about all the gameplay outside zombo hunting? Because that's just as important. One of the things I love about The Last of Us is that it's not constant action. In between your encounters, you'll have some room to breathe and reset. They teach you to cherish these fleeting moments super early on, and just take the time to relax and enjoy the environments, which can look so good, by the way. Being set in a post, or I guess mid-apocalyptic world, means the majority of these areas are going to be run-down remains of what used to be. Oftentimes it's real dark, covered in spores and residue of the infected. But when this game decides to be pretty, it's pretty. The way you see nature bleed through and take over the terrain is nothing short of gorgeous. I was honestly perfectly content with just walking through instead of sprinting to the next objective, just so I could stop and stare. Along the way, you'll find puzzles scattered across the world. And while it's nice to have another thing to do and sometimes think a little bit, these brain teasers don't tease your brain nearly as much as I wish they did, because I want my brain to be bullied. The Last of Us offers like 4 types of puzzles. The trash bin puzzle. Can't reach somewhere high? Find a dumpster to climb over. The generator puzzle. No power? Turn on the generator. The ladder puzzle. There's literally always a ladder conveniently lying around. And finally, the raft puzzle. Ellie can't swim, so when there's a water section, it's essentially confirmation that there's gonna be a raft somewhere so you can take her to the other side to get you up somehow.
Be careful.
Huh. Well, buckle up! But that brings us to another thing The Last of Us does that I completely adore, and that's conversations during gameplay. I know it's not a groundbreaking concept, but it just works so well here. Not only is the inclusion of them more realistic, but they serve as an opportunity to integrate more character dialogue without interrupting the flow of gameplay with a traditional cutscene. Banter with Bill, Ellie's whistling, Joel missing coffee.
Did you go to coffee shops a lot?
I did. All the time.
And what would you get?
Just coffee.
These are all superb. Even the one-liners from Ellie after Joel kills someone are excellent in portraying how initially shocking it is for her to see all these people dying in such a brutal manner.
Holy shit, Joel.
Or on the brighter side, Ellie and Sam playing darts and arguing over the score.
It's a tie.
No. You clearly got destroyed.
How did I clearly get destroyed? That's practically a tie.
Yeah, okay.
But nobody, and I mean nobody, is better at darts than Joel. Joel Miller, more like Joel Misser. The mid-gameplay dialogue only helps in further presenting and developing Joel and Ellie's characters, which is perfect because they're the best part about this game. Seeing them open up to each other about their past and ultimately form this precious bond is genuinely so incredible. But to do their journey justice, we're gonna have to switch gears. It's about time I finally talked about the meat and potatoes of The Last of Us, which is of course the story. I'm not gonna go over every single scene, but there's gonna be no shortage of spoilers either. So if you've been living under a rock like me for the past 9 years, I implore you to not throw that gift away and experience this wonderful adventure completely blind for yourself. But for everyone else, hop on my lap and I'll tell you a tale of immense love and wholesomeness. But first, let's cry for a little bit. The opening of The Last of Us, I kid you not, has got to be the most phenomenal intro to a game I've ever played. I never thought in a million years that game could make me cry in the first 15 minutes of playing. But The Last of Us did that to me. This intro sequence is so efficient in everything it does and accomplishes so much in such a short amount of time. We establish the setting, world issue, protagonist, and get this perfect setup for the rest of the campaign. Here we see a much younger Joel, and he's not an edgy tsundere, but a loving dad. His daughter Sarah gives him a watch for his birthday, and we get this super cute reaction between them which just feels so authentic.
Where did you get the money for this?
Drugs. I sell hardcore drugs.
Oh, good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
Obviously this doesn't apply to just this scene, because the whole game consistently presents such brilliant acting and writing. The perfect recipe for creating these realistic relationships and characters. But the wholesomeness is brought to a screeching halt when we learn about the zombie outbreak that's rapidly infected the population. Shortly after being attacked, we follow the struggle of Joel, his daughter, and brother as they seek out even the smallest form of refuge. The game keeps things cinematic, but even the basic gameplay of rushing through the streets with Sarah in your arms is more than enough to get your heart racing. Just as they think they've gone far enough from the city, Joel and Sarah are confronted with a soldier tasked with exterminating any infected civilians. Despite his initial hesitation and Joel's pleas, he gets his orders from his boss and fires on them. Joel makes it out okay thanks to Tommy, but the same can't be said for Sarah. And this scene is so excruciatingly perfect. If you haven't seen the Grindr documentary for this game, I highly recommend it. God, I sound like Troy Baker. But speaking of him, there's this amazing segment where he goes through how difficult it was to get his performance for the scene just right, and it genuinely makes you appreciate the art of acting so much. Every time I watch it, I'm just uncontrollably bawling.
I want to pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. 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 Please.
It lets the player know right away that, hey, this is the kind of game you're playing. And I love it for that. Next we get a 20-year flash forward and find Joel as this husk of a man. He has no one that he truly loves left, and is essentially surviving for the sake of surviving. Him and his partner Tess have been making it as smugglers, and it's thanks to an unconventional mission request that this game is made so memorable. Early on, we're introduced to a group known as the Fireflies. I could read off the whole wiki page to you, but to be frank, the only thing you need to know about them is that they're actively searching for a vaccine to combat the infection. And that's where Ellie comes in. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, she's somehow immune, and the Fireflies believe she's the key to getting them out of the Walking Dead. Marlene, insert last name here, is and has been the leader of the Fireflies. She was a good friend of Ellie's now deceased mother, and has basically filled that position for her. Finding out about Ellie's immunity prompts her to ask Joel to take her to a hospital across the country to achieve this goal of a cure by examining and reverse engineering Ellie's immunity. But when she proposes this, let's just say neither of them are totally on board.
I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's
Bullshit,
the
I'm not
best
going
Ellie.
with him.
They want nothing to do with each other. I touched on this very briefly before, but the development of Joel and Ellie's relationship is a good enough reason on its own to play this game. Having characters start off sour towards each other and then form this sweet bond is by no means unheard of, but the execution here is on point. Even the interactions where he and Ellie couldn't care less about each other are so entertaining. Joel will just walk into a room, lie on the couch, and tell Ellie to find something to do.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
The way their personalities mesh and contrast is a huge part of what makes this dynamic work so well. Joel's a guy in his 50s or so and has to deal with babysitting this teenage girl, and Ellie's just a kid putting up with this grumpy old man. Not only do their unwillingness to be around each other make perfect sense, but set the stage for growth. They're two completely different people, but with a common goal: survival. and the conditions of The Last of Us setting are what get them to realize how important it is to value the only ones you have left in this broken world. Like I mentioned earlier, the setting of a zombie apocalypse is far from an original concept, yet The Last of Us still creates this unforgettable adventure. This is due to two main reasons. The first we've already discussed, the immersive gameplay, but the second, and arguably more significant reason, are the characters. Nearly every character from The Last of Us feels so painfully yet perfectly human. Every reaction is so authentic and warranted. Joel and Ellie are obviously the stars of the show here, but I do want to mention Tess, Henry, Sam, and eventually Marlene, but we'll talk about her later. Tess comes off as the strong, independent woman Lara Croft-esque character, and doesn't hesitate when people mess with her. This is cool and all, but the best thing her character does is die. Okay, hear me out. A few hours into the game, Tess gets bitten, and this is the first time we truly see the impact the infection has on people. The way we see that strong personality we've grown to know crack with fear makes for such a powerful scene.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There is no way that...
I will not turn into one of those things. Come on. Make this easy for me.
I can find...
No, just go! Just fucking go.
Now, would you believe me if I said that this was the tip of the iceberg? The only other people we travel with are Henry and Sam, two brothers looking to make it to the Fireflies as well. Henry is the kind and responsible older brother, and Sam is another nervous kid just trying to keep up. Henry's hard on Sam, and Sam feels that pressure, but it's out of love and fear that he'll get hurt. Sam doesn't have too many lines, but there's this one scene with him and Ellie where they speak of what they're most afraid of.
What about you?
Those things out there. What if the people are still inside? What if they're trapped in there without any control of their body? Scared of that happening to me.
Then as soon as Ellie leaves the room, he reveals a bite on his ankle. The next morning, Ellie goes to wake Sam up, only to find that the cordyceps has brought him to the first stage of infection. Henry is forced to shoot his own brother to protect Ellie, and it breaks him.
Henry? Henry, stay there. Henry?
What have you done?
I'm gonna get that gun from you, okay? Oh, okay, easy.
It's your fault.
This is nobody's fault, Henry.
It's all your fault.
Henry! Henry, no!
Oh my god.
This is one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in the game. It only builds on what Tess's death showed us, how fear and loss can completely destroy these people. It's the vulnerability of these human beings that make them so frighteningly realistic. And that brings us back to Joel and Ellie. It's gonna be damn hard to put into words how much these characters mean to me, but I will try my dang darnest best. So let's just start somewhere. Right after they lose Tess, Ellie makes an attempt to talk to Joel about their predicament, but he shuts her down immediately.
Hey, look, about Tess. I don't even know what...
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever. Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves.
It's made very clear that he wants nothing to do with her. Like Tess said originally, she's just cargo. He's gonna drag her to his brother and then go on with his life. Which, what the hell, man, that's not cool. Hashtag justice for Ellie, please. But bit by bit, he warms up to her and realizes that Ellie's more than just the dead weight he's been treating her as. This is even shown in gameplay where they have to get past a fence, and it's Ellie's idea of boosting her over to unlock it to get them through. Or when Joel gets caught in a trap, there's no way he would have gotten out if it weren't for Ellie cutting the counterweight. He demonstrates this change in perspective, especially in the conversations with Bill, an old friend he has to meet up with to fix up a car. He tells Joel time and time again that having someone to look after for is basically a suicide mission, but Joel refuses and defends Ellie.
That girl nearly got us killed.
You gotta admit, she did hold her own back there.
You ain't gonna make it.
Then we have this hilarious scene in the car where Ellie's going through all the stuff she found back at Bill's. You can tell Joel's warmed up to her a bit, as Ellie's far more comfortable around him, finally showing her funny and lighthearted personality instead of just robotically taking orders. Ellie is overall such a likable character. She has that adorable childlike wonder to her, displayed through her interest in comic books, touching stuff she shouldn't, and the jokes she tells you throughout your journey. Bro, the jokes!
I walked into my sister's room and tripped on a bra. It was a booby trap.
While Ellie's this fun kid at heart, she knows when to get serious too. She sticks up for herself in this admirable way and doesn't let adults push her around. When Joel's talking crap about Marlene, she doesn't put up with it. When Bill handcuffs her to a wall, she rips off that damn pipe and hits him. But despite this, she continuously needs to prove herself to Joel. For the longest time, he just sees her as a hopeless child. And to be fair, how could you not? But the game does such a brilliant job of presenting Ellie's perspective that you can't help but root for her. Take the time Joel is drowning, for example. On his way back to Ellie, he gets jumped and is about to be killed, but is saved by Ellie at the last second. She's expecting the validation she rightfully deserves from this person she's grown to look up to, but receives the contrary.
And you just hang back like I told you to.
Well, you're glad I didn't, right?
I'm glad I didn't get my head blown off by a goddamn kid.
You know what? No. How about, hey, Ellie, I know it wasn't easy, but it was either him or me. Thanks for saving my ass. You got anything like that for me, Joel?
We gotta get going.
Lead the way.
Like, bro, what? Joel is a prick! And then through the entire next area, Naughty Dog pays this great attention to detail where Ellie acts extremely dismissive because she knows whatever she's gonna do isn't gonna be appreciated. Like, that is brutal! But once we get through the area, Joel makes an effort to redeem himself. They come across a horde of hunters, and he lets Ellie help out by sniping them. There's this adorable teaching moment between the two, and Joel kinda manages to say thank you for what happened earlier.
Just so we're clear about back there, it was either him or me.
Look, he's trying. We then understand how helpful Ellie is as she takes out enemies during gameplay, and it's especially effective if you're as terrible as me. After the enemies have been cleared out, we see her timidly approach Joel, hoping for even the slightest confirmation that she did alright, which she gets this time, and as a reward is entrusted with her own pistol. The growth of their relationship changes subtly each time, so major steps forward like these never feel contrived. They both come off as incredibly honest and human characters gradually learning to trust each other. Their final test in acceptance happens when we get to fall. The two have finally arrived at Tommy's, as Tess's final wish was for Joel to take Ellie to his brother so he could continue the journey from there. While Joel had this incentive in mind for the majority of their travels, Ellie was never made aware of this, and when she finds out, happiness is the last thing she feels. In a fit of frustration and disappointment, Ellie steals one of the horses and runs off to an old farmhouse. Once Joel catches up, we have probably my favorite cutscene in the entire game. It opens up with this jab at the heart of a line from Ellie as she's reading an old diary by another teenage girl, but before the zombie outbreak.
Is this really all they had to worry about? Boys? Movies? Deciding which shirt goes with which skirt?
It's this painful reminder as to how Ellie's been stripped of a childhood in exchange for a life of strife and desperate survival. This is followed up with Joel trying to guilt trip her for running away so recklessly, and Ellie unleashing her infuriation due to Joel's attempt to leave her behind. But it's turned up to 11 when Ellie says the following.
Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Ashley Johnson's performance here is absolutely incredible. It's nearly impossible not to get teary-eyed and sympathize with Ellie in this moment. She's a kid and never gets the chance to establish lasting relationships with adequate nurturing that most require when growing up. She thought she finally found that with Joel, only to be stabbed in the back once she let her guard down. The Last of Us hits you with these tear-jerking scenes one after the other. The combination of great writing, acting, moving music, and flawless facial animation make for so many extremely emotionally susceptible moments. Joel declines at first, but even his heart can't take the guilt that would be leaving Ellie behind after hearing her side of the story. So he ultimately realizes that taking Ellie the rest of the way is the correct decision. And when Joel tells her to get off the horse, Ellie's smile says it all. This game keeps playing with my heart like it's nobody's business, and I can't get enough of it. Naughty Dog will get me wailing like a baby, yet bring out the most wholesome stuff I've ever seen. Like, look how he lifts her up under the horse. It's the best. Then in the immediate next cutscene, Joel's teaching her how football works, and I'm on the floor because it's just too cute, bro. I'd say from the college campus forward is when Joel really starts treating Ellie as an equal. He lets her participate in all their endeavors, and now they truly feel like a team, like a family. That's reflected especially in every passing conversation. Their small banter over the name Ellie gave the horse is very fun.
I'll stay with Callus.
I hate that name.
I love Joel talking about wanting to be a singer.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to want to be a singer.
Shut up.
No, serious.
Sing something.
No.
Come on, I won't laugh.
I don't think so.
Joel, please.
We're just popping off over seeing some monkeys.
That was kind of awesome.
Well, first time seeing a monkey?
First time seeing a monkey.
The two of them together are constantly an absolute joy to be around, but like we saw at the beginning of the game, the wholesomeness can't last forever, and that rude awakening for us happens with the fall. Due to fighting off a hunter, Joel falls through the railing and directly onto a sharp metal rod. Ellie panics and rushes down to assist him, and this is when she finally gets to take the lead. This whole sequence after the fall is incredible. The audio blurring and visuals fading get the player to understand how arduous these simple tasks have become for Joel, and if they didn't trust Ellie before, they better now. One of my favorite things this segment does is humble Joel. For the first time, he has no choice but for Ellie to take the reins. He tries to act tough, but is quickly put in his place.
Oh man. Here, lean on me.
No.
Well, can you walk?
Yes.
Then fucking walk!
This is what makes him realize that he relies on Ellie just as much as she relies on him. Seeing Ellie act as his bodyguard and crutch is so gratifying after seeing all that it took to prove her worth to him. We make it back to Callus, but the relief is short-lived as Joel falls off and we transition to Winter. We resume playing as Ellie for the first time, instantly informing the player of her growth since the beginning of the journey, and the focus of this season. Now she's in charge, we see her hunting for food to survive, and more importantly, nursing Joel back to health. This game understands that actions speak louder than words, and avoids using straight up dialogue to present the feelings of characters. Naughty Dog shows, they don't tell. We don't need Ellie to say anything for us to understand how much she cares for him. We get that from a simple arm over him as he sleeps, her facial expression as she feels his pain, and the lengths she goes to make sure he stays alive. Keeping his heart beating is taking everything she has, yet conditions become even more dire when she comes across David while hunting. He comes across as friendly, but Ellie has a PhD in stranger danger and never lets her guard down. He tries getting her to follow them back to their camp for some medicine in exchange for the deer, and Ellie puts him in his place.
Welcome to follow us
I'm
back.
not following you anywhere. Buddy boy can go get it. He comes back with what I need. The deer is all yours. Anyone else shows up...
You put one right between my eyes.
That's right.
Is it not the best thing in the world seeing this little girl boss these grown men around? Dude, I can't get enough of it. She even gets him to hand over his rifle. Like, come on! Let's go, Ellie! At one point, they take shelter by a campfire while waiting for Buddy Boy to bring back the medicine. Things start getting problematic when David says to us, everything happens for a reason. He backs up this claim by telling a story of how he sent out a group of men to get food, and nearly all of them were slaughtered by a crazy man.
And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl.
Uh-oh. The rest of this chapter is Ellie's struggle to get these men off her tail. In the process, she loses Callus, has to abandon Joel to draw them away from him, and the danger of David only escalates. Just when she thinks she's caught a break, David comes up from behind and brings her to unconsciousness. Ellie wakes up behind bars, and it becomes painfully apparent that David's whole nice act was just a flimsy facade to hide the pedophilic cannibal that he really is. What I love about Ellie here is how she's presented as rightfully terrified and unsafe, but not hopeless either. She uses her brains to fight her way out with such clever and admirable tactics. She breaks David's hand while he's trying to hold hers and almost takes the key from him. Right before they're about to kill her, Ellie uses her bite mark as a distraction and then swings the machete back at them. Like, that's cool as hell. But throughout all of this, it's never confidence that fills her, but brutally realistic terror. The toll it's taking on her is made apparent, and thus the stakes are raised. While Ellie is doing all she can to make it out with her life, the game switches back over to Joel's perspective, who's now awake and concerned. Playing as Joel again contrasts deeply with Ellie. He powers through David's henchmen with a burning rage and becomes Batman.
Where is she?
Then take Ellie's crucial reliance on stealth, which gives the player a sense of fright and trepidation. The gameplay has been utilized in such a smart way to convey the characters' emotions and their dissimilarity. Joel's hunt for David's settlement brings him to his darkest and most aggressive state yet. We see him brutally torturing these men to squeeze out the information he needs. This guy's like the scariest damn interrogator I've ever seen.
Is she alive?
What girl? I don't know no girl.
Focus right here, right here. I'll pop your goddamn knee off. The girl.
Like, geez, dude, Connor's 28 stab wounds ain't got nothing on this. It goes without saying that Joel does a lot of bad things. Over the course of the adventure, you kill dozens of other human beings, but it's all for the sake of survival. This time round, though, Joel has the upper hand, yet kills them in a more violent and excruciating way than we've ever seen before. And as weird as it sounds, it's because now he's doing it out of love. But we'll get back to that later. This season is climaxed with one of the only boss fights in the game, Ellie versus David. After a few sneak attacks, the duel comes to a standstill, in which you're prompted to go after the dropped machete with the little energy Ellie has remaining. She crawls across the carpet, only to be abruptly thrown off track with a kick from David, who has now recovered. Naughty Dog has done such a great job of giving this moment the necessary tension. The themes and previous events of this game have gotten us to feel as if anything can happen, and that nobody is safe. So when he kicks Ellie again and says,
You have no idea what I'm capable of.
it scares the crap out of you. Thankfully, Ellie reaches the machete just in time and doesn't hesitate to bash his skull in.
Stop! Stop!
Fucking touch me!
It's okay. It's me. It's me. It's me. Look. It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Joel.
The same powerful theme of capability despite vulnerability just keeps getting used to such a masterful extent. I love how they let Ellie be the one to save herself, instead of Joel having to do it for her. They let Ellie win the physical battle, but not the psychological one. Having her lose this mental fight and face this trauma over and over again tells the player that she's an actual person, just like us. The game actually tries to send a message with this scene, that all of us could use a figure like Joel in our lives, a shoulder to cry on, someone to fight those inner battles with. And that's nothing to be ashamed of, because that's what it means to be human. This of course leads us to spring, the final season of the game. Now Joel and Ellie have arrived in Utah, and the hospital they've been searching for all this time is within viewing distance. There's this massive portion of gameplay where it's just Joel, Ellie, and the world. There's no infected around to ruin the peace, and the player gets to take their first breath of relief since the constant action and uneasiness that came with winter. They get to pet a giraffe, gaze upon the city, and we're reminded of the loving and simple people Joel and Ellie can be when there's no one trying to kill them. That being said though, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. No, that would be too much fun, and fun is illegal at Naughty Dog. Despite the beauty of areas, there's still this unsettling apprehension that stems from the two the closer they get to the hospital. Ellie is far less chipper until we find the giraffe, and it's even portrayed in a gameplay section in which she doesn't initially go to get boosted up for the ladder, and has to be reminded despite having done this so many times. As for Joel, it's made a little less obvious. We actually see him in a more optimistic spot than ever, showing growth as he takes the photo of Sarah that he previously rejected. But that concern for Ellie remains evident, even considering turning back after everything they fought through. Both of them keep a slight perturbation, which is unfortunately confirmed upon finding the Fireflies. After nearly dying in an underwater bus escapade, Joel wakes up in a hospital bed to find Marlene sitting next to him. The first thing Joel says is Ellie's name, and gets confirmation that she's still alive as well. At first, the interaction between them is one filled with awe and gratitude, but it quickly goes downhill when she declines his request to see Ellie, and Joel learns that she's being prepped for surgery.
What do you mean, surgery?
The doctors tell me the cordyceps, the growth inside her, has somehow mutated. It's why she's immune. Once they remove it, they'll be able to reverse engineer a vaccine. A vaccine.
But it grows all over the brain.
It does.
Knowing the creation of a vaccine would cost Ellie's life, it brings Joel to that same state of belligerence that we saw in Winter. When this hostility is drawn out of him, it really seems like he's the villain of the story. And that's because he is. Joel proceeds to go through the hospital, killing soldier after soldier to get to the operation room and stop mankind from ever being saved. The Fireflies are a group that have been working to find a cure forever, and with Ellie, that's finally possible. These so-called enemies are all good people doing everything in their power to restore humanity, but Joel ruthlessly slaughters them. And the best part is that the player is completely on board with it. Joel has perhaps the most relatable incentive for his actions here, to save Ellie, the only person he has left on this planet. While the player knows damn well what they're doing is horribly wrong, they also know it's exactly what they want to do. Having played through the game, we're aware of just how much Ellie means to Joel, and how much she means to us. Joel is doing all of these terrible, evil actions out of immense love. and so are we. So there's no hesitation when it comes down to the choice as to whether we sacrifice or save her. It's this inner moral battle the players have to go through that makes this ending segment so compelling. This culminates in you having to kill the only surgeon left who could have done the job. Joel takes Ellie from the operating room and you sprint through the halls with her in your arms. The strings playing alongside Joel's broken words of reassurance as you rush for the exit are more than enough to get you tearing up.
We're okay. We're okay.
He escapes the soldiers, but Marlene stops him in his tracks. And it's this line in particular that tugs at those heartstrings.
It's what she'd want. And you know it.
And she's absolutely right. Ellie's dismissiveness from earlier gives the impression that she knew what was coming, but decided she was ultimately okay with it because her life would be used for a much bigger cause. Joel realizes that as well, but can't come to terms with making that sacrifice. Marlene gives him one final chance to do the right thing, and he throws it away.
Let me go. Please.
You just come after her.
When Ellie wakes, she rightfully has her suspicions and asks Joel what happened, but he lies and tells her that they've stopped looking for a cure, and that there's supposedly dozens of others who are immune as well. Joel has proven himself to be this terrible, terrible person, but it works because we understand what's going through his head so well. Ellie has filled the role that Sarah once had, and after what happened to her, Joel is going to do everything in his power to avoid losing Ellie, even if it means being the selfish scum of the earth that he is, single-handedly dooming humanity and lying to the one he loves most. This brings us to the final scene of the game, and just like everything we've seen before, manages to say so much with so little words.
Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
And just like that, the credits roll. Joel decides to commit to his lie, and a simple okay is all we're left with. There are plenty of clues in the form of body language that tell us what's going through their heads, but it still leaves so much ambiguity and flexible interpretation. It's just perfect. A fantastic ending to a fantastic game. The Last of Us is without a doubt a monumental title in the medium of gaming. It's a game that showed deniers why and how video games are art, how effectively they can be in bringing you on an emotional journey. I feel extremely confident when I call The Last of Us a masterpiece. Even though I only first finished it in January, it already feels like a game I've known forever. I love the gameplay, the world, how the gameplay enhances the world, Joel, Ellie, how Joel and Ellie overcome each challenge together, all culminating in such an unbelievably thought-provoking ending. It's very tricky to write about something you love so much because you have to capture those colossal feelings in mere words. I'm not sure if I totally accomplished that here, but I tried my best and hopefully did the game a fraction of the justice it deserves. I feel like my videos just keep getting longer and longer no matter how hard I try to keep things concise, so thank you guys for sitting through me rambling about video games for however long this video ends up being. It's so surreal and frankly unbelievable seeing all the support. On that note, I want to give a quick shout out to my friends Maury Wolf and Claire Benkonet. They streamed full playthroughs of this game and gave me that final push I needed to finally dive into this masterclass of storytelling. They are really good at what they do, so please go show them some love. Links in the description. That's all I have for now. So here's another massive thank you your way, and as always, I hope you have a fantastic day.